Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to episode of Nick Egan Times. On this episode, we have an awesome guest, and we have the guest, the Big D, and the Kids Table in the House, who are a ska punk band formed in October 1995 in Boston, Massachusetts. Their members have been around a very long time, and they've just released some new music and a new album. And yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast, guys. Welcome.
It's my pleasure. It's awesome. It's awesome. What time is it there?
It's 6 a.m. Australian time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thanks for being up early.
It's all right, mate. Looking forward to it.
Nice.
It's
It's three here.
In the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How's it all been going since the pandemic's hit? How's life affected you personally and professionally?
Well, I guess, compared to many, I've been quite lucky. Never got COVID, knock, knock, and don't really know anybody too close who, like, I know a couple people who've gotten it, but no, like, horror stories, if you will. So other than knowing that some terrible things have happened to other people in my run, everything's been going okay. And I kind of for some of us, the lockdown was awesome. Like for some artists, it was super nice to kind of shut the world off and regroup, especially in America these days.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's just jump straight into it. Tell me about Big D and the Kids Table's journey. How it all began.
It's kind of I mean, it's silly for me to say, but it's quite wonderful because I always kind of grew up with different mentalities that are pretty outdated maybe these days. Meaning, like, in the heavy metal, the 80s metal scene, it was very like F popularity and selling out and all that stuff. And then I went to grunge, and rap and hip hop had a lot to do with that, and some ska at the time. And so what I'm getting at is, Big D never did that thing that's like, we're gonna start a band and go to LA or New York and make it big. Like, it really is just always just been about making music with our buddies and having a good time and see where it takes us. So where it's taken us has been a wild ride. None of the people in Big D should have ever been able to afford the amount of culture we've seen. We've traveled the world, we've done tours deep in China and Southeast Asia, and I've been to Australia twice now, but people like us, we wouldn't be able to do those things. We wouldn't be able to afford those luxuries. You can't really take time off at work and pay rent and go gallivant around the world unless you're extremely fortunate. And so Big D has just been this amazing experience of actually getting music out and heard by people and seeing the world, and it's just kind of a perfect story for us all involved.
Incredible. Where's been your favorite place, I guess, you've traveled the world to?
Well, I have a cop-out answer, but then I'll answer it real. But my cop-out answer is real, and it's wherever I haven't been before. You know what I mean? Like, if we're going somewhere we've never been, it's a huge deal. It's just like, butterflies, and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe we're about to do this. So I mean, I think the craziest place, the most jaw-dropping, like one thing after another of just like spectacular and specular things, would be China. I mean, China. I mean, the Terracotta Waters, the Forbidden City, the Great Wall. I mean, there was this one time we saw this sneaker shop or some. No, we saw this. Sorry, I meant to say we saw this old kind of like museum looking thing. So we went in there to kind of get some culture and check it out. But it was a sneaker shop. Like, some of the architecture is so old that they have so much of it that it's not important. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can still So I mean, China and Southeast Asia was mind blowing. It was just, Southeast Asia, people would show up with their kids, like, dressed to the nines, like these teeny little, like, babies and toddlers, but they're all dressed better than any of us or any, you know what I mean? So those experiences were pretty pretty outstanding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, talk to me about the new music and the album you've just released, and what's inspired it, and what's the catalyst behind it.
Well, Do Your Art is a really fun record. It's got 20 tracks. We're a punk ska band, so when it first came to the ska stuff, you know, we do what Big D does, and our ska is very like fast and gritty, and so that's just a normal Big D just rolling their sleeves up and writing some ska songs. But then when it came to the punk element of the band, I kind of had a backup because, you know, we've done a lot of songs, trying to convey a message, but these days it's starting, punk messages are almost coming off like Facebook arguments or online arguments, meaning like saying what you believe in with power. So it's like, I didn't want to write any sort of topical thing that had to do anything with the last 4 or 5 years, because one, you don't want to write about things that's terrible things that are going on, and then those things end, and then you go on tour and you carry them with you. You know what I mean? Like if we had a shit president and he's gone now, I don't want to write songs about him because I don't want him in my life anymore. You know what I mean? And so, so when it came to the punk songs, we didn't want anything to do with certain things, and we didn't want to just sound like a Facebook argument. But we still like playing the music, So I kind of went back to like punk, like the Dead Milkmen and the Groovy Ghoulies, and even like the Ramones, where you can still have a fun song, but that's punk, but you don't have to put your finger and have it be about politics this round. And the band's been around for so long that I've said my piece in a lot of political, if you want to, humanitarian topics. And if you say it once, you don't have to say it like, this is that song version 2. You know what I mean? Like, I eloquently said it the first time. So I think when it came to the punk stuff, we just wanted to make sure that our listeners didn't have to turn on an argument. They could at least enjoy punk without going, yeah, I know the world sucks, I can't listen to it again. So that's kind of like where we came from. And then the album title, Do Your Art, comes from being around other musicians and slowly realizing like a lot of the musicians that you're around are kind of from fortunate families and connected families. Like they might know someone in the industry, or their parents make a lot of money between their jobs. And so you start to kind of realize that like, oh, the deck is stacked. I get it. And then I see back home and around the world, really talented musicians and artists like hang up their suits and hang up their paintbrushes and hang up their guitars because they think they're not good enough, as artists. And you start to go like, no. You are good enough. It's just that the deck is stacked. It's people are born on third base, and they're going to get it before you. And there's nothing wrong with, fortunate, connected people being artists. I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to say to all the less fortunate who think they're not good enough, and that's why the world didn't accept them in their art. You just try to tell them that's not how it is. Keep doing your art. It doesn't matter if the world is applauding you for it. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's a magic mutant X-Men power inside you, and you can't hang up your suit,
That's incredible. That's really incredible.
Yeah, it's just so disappointing. You get these guitar players and illustrators that are just geniuses. Right?
Yeah. Where did the name Big D and the Kids Table come from? How did that originate?
Oh, so I had a really good friend, one of my best friends in high school, tell me right before I went to college, he goes, Dave, he's just a funny guy, Connor Donnelly. And he's like, next time you have a band, he knew I was leaving high school, and he said, call it Big D and the Kids Table. And I was like, okay. And he's like, no, promise. And I'm like, I promise. And he got it from an AT&T commercial. Like, it was like, he just thought it was funny. It was like, you can call Glinda in Alabama for 2 cents a minute, or you can call Big D and the Kids Table. And, it was just this random thing. And so when Big D started, I said to the guys, I was like, hey, my friend said, if I start another band, if I could call it Big D and the Kids Table, is that cool with you guys? And like nobody in the band cared because, you know, we were just, you know, having fun, just, you know, kicking it around. And so we decided to call the band Big D and the Kids Table. And then 25 years later, we're Big D and the Kids Table. It's ridiculous.
It's amazing. It is amazing the journey you've had, and like obviously you're long. What has given longevity too?
What's made it work?
Yeah, what's given Big D the longevity to obviously, you know, it's a long time, 1995 to what 2021 now, and early 2022. That's a long time to keep the momentum and the energy of the band going.
Yeah, it's true. I would say two things have kept the band going. One is at every crossroads of my life, you know, different every 7 years, they say, you know, you could kind of come across a crossroads. The path to Big D has always been the kindest, nicest choice. There's never been a choice to go a different way that's just filled with all the kindness. You know what I mean? Like the world is pretty mean to everybody, and the Big D fans and the Big D shows and the Big D listeners, and it's just always been the path of a better life experience. And at the same time, you know, like I said before, Big D's never wanted to, you know, Big D's way bigger than we ever wanted to be or thought to be. You know, we just wanted to play a show in a club, really. You know, we just wanted to kind of play a little bit. And so by not being disappointed or having like not wanting to be like the number one American entertainer or the number one global entertainer, you know, we've never been disappointed. You know what I mean? Like we've never had goals. I think maybe some bands try to set for themselves and are like, we didn't make the goal. You know what I mean? So just by being simple musicians who want to write songs, and if people want to hear those songs, they'll let us know, and we'll try and go there and do it. You know, so it's just been a nice path. Like, you know, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, awesome. What's been some of the fondest memories that you can recall? And yeah, what are some of the best experiences you've had with fans in the past?
Yeah, I think every single time, I think there's something about going to a different country. You know, going to England, going to London, right? Because, you know, London has such a music history, you know, and playing like a show in London and having people that, you know, let me get like really dumb American on this one. Like you watch all these like cool English movies from Guy Ritchie, right? So you're like, England's so awesome, London's so cool, right? And then you go there and you think, you know, that they're going to be like the popular girl in high school and you're going to be the freshman and there won't be any conversation. But then suddenly like people will start talking to you and you're like, wow, you know, can't believe these people are talking to me and in liking the band, you know what I mean? So whenever you go to a different country and people, you know what artistically what you've been doing, it's just mind blowing. But one of the weirdest things, one of the luckiest things I ever did was got married, and then my wife and I went to the Isle of Skye in Scotland. It's in Northern Ireland, and it was really hard to get there. We were pretty tired, and we got to this pub, and she said, "I'm going to use the washroom. I'll be right back." And I said, "All right," and I'll get us some pints. We haven't talked to anybody yet in the Isle of Skye, and I ordered 2 pints, and the bartender goes, "You're David McQueen of Big D and the Kids Table, aren't you?" And you have to understand, like, that's where my like ancestors are from, the Isle of Skye. And so when I told my uncle and I told my dad, you know, I'm going there, it was a big, you know, like big deal in the family. And so the fact that someone said my name there was, it's because of the band, you know, was just exciting. You know, and it was like a nice family bookends, or something to that effect, you know.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And then one other thing is when people get tattoos, you know, when people get like lyric tattoos, that is just like a ridiculous honor. You know, I mean, that's like one of the highest honors.
Yeah, it is. You know, they're giving space. You know.
Yeah. It's like, Mom, what does that mean?
That's too funny. And what about your best tour that you can recall that you've done?
There's been a couple, like at the early stages. We went on tour with the Suicide Machines, and they were, huge heroes. And we were the first band out of four. And usually they don't have four bands on tour. You have two or three, and then you have a local opener. But for this tour, it was four bands. And we found out later that like the people in charge, I'm kind of feeling like didn't necessarily want four bands, and there wasn't money for it. But Jay made sure that we went, and they were secretly paying us money out of their merch, our guarantee out of their merch. I mean, that's ridiculous. So that was kind of like the greatest tour, because not only is your hero band taking you on tour, but they're trying to make sure you go on tour like against the industry, if you will, and they're paying you out of their merch money. I experienced that, but I've never heard of anything like it other than that. It just doesn't happen. So that was great. And then I would have to say, the Warped Tour in general, just being, they always say it's like a family and it's like its own world. It really is true. And that world, that dimension, that side culture was just so good. It just functioned so well. Just everyone involved, from production to Kevin Lyman. And it was just a very wonderful traveling circus. And I can't believe I was allowed to just live in that bubble. So that was quite nuts. And then playing Reading and Leeds in England was crazy, because all the super awesomest bands play Reading and Leeds. And the best thing about playing Reading and Leeds was, Reading in particular, is we were like, a teeny weeny little band, but everyone was so polite, like who works there. And I said to our tour manager from Hardskin, Johnny Takeaway, Ben Corrigan, I was like, why are people taking our pictures backstage, like while we're just kind of talking? They have this like communal area. And he's like, well, they have this mentality that, like, even though you're small now, like you might be somebody later, and they just want to make sure they get photos of you, like, like an early photo of an artist, and they respect you already. Like just the whole idea, was awesome. So I think those are kind of my favorites.
Amazing. That's amazing. What is the process behind the songwriting?
Well, fundamentally, some people can stop playing music. Some people can go like, oh, all right, I can turn it off. I'll just kind of noodle. But then some people are like really, truly addicted to it. Like, I've kind of figured out within the last kind of 5 years, no matter what I say, even if I'm like, I can't stop. Like it's like a problem. So, everybody in Big D loves music and wants to write music. And I think one of the secrets is we always encourage each other to write music. So there's not like one songwriter, even though like some of us write a huge amount. It's not one of those bands that's like, I write the songs, we'll be like, you can do it. Like, we try to nurture each other's ideas. So I think it's just a safe place where, you can experiment and challenge each other and try to impress each other, being used in a good way. We don't really write, like I was saying earlier, we don't like write for fame and glory. We write to kind of just make each other go like, yeah, So yeah, I try to keep it the way, some of the best times in music is when you're like 17 years old or 16 years old, before you can even like drive around in the States, and you're just kind of like with your buddies. Maybe it's like some sort of sleepover or something, and you just talk about music and you play records. And I always just try to keep it like that. We always try to keep it more like we're fans of music, writing music, rather than we're in a band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Big D doesn't ever really. Big D has we don't realize we're in a band, really.
That's cool. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh, that's fun. That's great. There's a couple. I'll do the music ones. because just thinking about him. Joe Gittleman from the Bosstones once said, "Your listeners will gladly wait for the right record than to get the wrong record sooner."
Nice.
Don't rush yourself.
Yeah.
And then, oddly enough, Nate Albert, former guitar player who still plays with them every once in a while, of the Bosstones, once said something like, "If you want somebody to write about your band, you have to give them something to write about." You know what I mean? Like you can't just be like, "I got a new record." It's like, "Cool, bro. We all got new records." You know what I mean? You have to help them out. You know what I mean? But those are like music questions. Music advice. I can't really pinpoint any certain quote, but referring to Johnny Takeaway, Ben Corrigan of the UK band Hardskin, his just demeanor is just something that I always kind of observe and try to be like, just his way of just living. And one of our other tour managers, Dale Thompson, two different tour managers, or Van Drive, how they do it. When you get older, you don't really like look up to many people as much than when you're younger. But or try to model yourself a little bit if you can after them. And those two people, I think are great, have great character and are good to look up to. He like drove like Green Day and Fugazi, but then he does other things like, just to name drop. He's like the guy. He'll say something and you'll write it down.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
What are your passions and hobbies outside of music?
Well, my life is kind of constructed in a way where some of my hobbies always have to do with survival. Just surviving. So I like to, fix the house that I live in. It sounds boring, but I like carpentry. Like if I could do a matrix download of skill, if I couldn't be a musician, I'd want to be like an outstanding carpenter. So it's always just kind of like making something better, making something nice. I like to create things. So, I'm building like out of some spare wood. I recently got, a clubhouse for my daughter, and I'm fixing like some rotten wood boards around, and it makes me feel healthy. And at the same time, I like the skills, the idea of the skill set, and I have to do it because I can't afford to hire people to do it. So it's still part of surviving. So most of my hobbies are about survival in the world. I don't really, I guess I could lighten up and think of something else. I like to write books, but that's still kind of art. Even though it's not music, it's still part of art. So if we wanted to lead, so I like music, I like writing, and I like, some of these things. I like folding merch. A little stupid, but like when the merch comes, like I try to make sure I'm the guy who gets to fold it. I like doing the mail orders. Do you know what I mean? I like things that do something. Like I put the package together, I give it to you, you're happy about the package. That's awesome. I rip the rotten board off the house, I put a good board on, and I paint it, and it looks good. I like things that, do something. That meaning like I'm not the best with sports because, nothing happens after. There's nothing exists after, other than maybe pride of winning. But that probably goes away. So I don't know. I think that's kind of all I do is do art and survive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. What if you ate in again and you could change anything and go back in time, what would you change?
Oof, you gotta be kidding me. If I could go back in time and change, I can't. This is such like a fairly normal question that I think I've ever been asked. And I'm not okay. So I'm gonna first, not do one of those things that's like, save humanity. I mean, I'd obviously go murder Hitler. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I'd do it with great pomp and circumstance. But so if we're saying that's not the point of the conversation, well, Okay, and then one more. I'd love to see what dinosaurs are doing. So obviously that's not what you mean either. So I'd love to go see what dinosaurs are doing. Like, what are you guys doing? Did anybody sleep where my house is? Um, so to keep it more realistic, um, I don't know. Sometimes I put my foot in my mouth. Like I don't really care about famous people. Like, you know, the way culture is right now, like Kardashian stuff. I don't really care about that stuff. But at the same time, I do get really nervous around, like, you know, some famous people. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those awesome people that are like, yeah, dude, it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter, but still I'm like, ooh. So I think like with Tim Armstrong, you know, like I've had a couple like fun hangouts with him. Maybe I would have taken my foot out of my mouth a couple times when I talked to him. You know, when you walk away from talking to one of your heroes, like Lynn from Operation Ivy, and you're like, you're such an idiot. You know? So maybe something like that. But I want to answer one more because it's so fun. No, that's probably it. Dinosaurs, Hitler, and not making a fool of yourself in front of Lynn.
Oh, that's great. And thank you for sharing those insights. That's amazing in your answer. I love the third one too. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, thanks for coming on the podcast. I do appreciate it. You know, the music you've done and, you know, over the years, it's been amazing, and the journey. And yeah, looking forward to listening to the new music and where you're going in the future.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And can I say some clumsy Australian things?
Go for it.
I love pie face. You know that chain of
Pie shops, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's such. I love those kinds of pies, small pies. You know, like, and we don't get them. We don't have that store here, so I love that. And my whole time, the 2 times I've been in Australia, just so fun. I mean, it's so frustrating how far away it is. Right?
Yeah, no, it is.
But I just love it. I love it there. It's just been so great. And we have some really, 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 really kind friends, you know, obviously other than the resonators, but really, really nice friends there that I hope to get back and see.
Yeah, you have to come down here. We're waiting for you. So
We'll have to hang.
100%. We will definitely do that.
Right on.
All right. See you, mate.